From the NFL Combine in Indianapolis, this is Philadelphia Eagles Now by Chat Sports. I'm Chase Sr. Thanks to all of you for making today's show a part of your day. Want to get to the latest on Eagles edge rusher Haason Reddick? Are the Birds going to give him a contract extension? Is he going to get traded away because his asking price a little bit too high for Philadelphia's liking? According to reports, teams here in Indianapolis talking to the Eagles about a potential Reddick trade. And the Reddick trade buzz has been ongoing over the last couple of weeks. The supremely talented and productive edge rusher is entering the final year of that 3-year, $45 million contract that he signed going into the 2022 season. It's been a great bargain deal for Philadelphia, considering the production that they've gotten from the Camden, New Jersey, and Temple University product. And now that Reddick is going into the final year of that contract, non-guaranteed money here in 2024, he's seeking a pretty lucrative contract extension. And of course, when you have a player who wakes up and gives you double-digit sack production every single year, you want to keep a player like that, especially with the story that he has. Camden, New Jersey, and was like a 2-star recruit. Matt Rule finds him, goes to Temple, really progresses in North Philadelphia, becomes a stud. Arizona Cardinals draft him, gets off to a little bit of a sluggish start in his NFL career. Then he becomes one of the top edge rushers in the game and comes back home to Philadelphia, where he's been a great player. 16 sacks en route to the Super Bowl in 2022, fourth in Defensive Player of the Year voting that year, and last year, a down year for him in this entire Eagles defense, yet he still notches 11 sacks. And from Howie Roseman's seat here, he looks at the player, 29 years old, late bloomer, so he's still in his prime. He's not quite a tier 1 edge rusher like a Myles Garrett, a Nick Bosa, a TJ Watt, a Max Crosby, but right below that upper echelon of edge rushers, Haason Reddick is right there, like in the 1B range, if that makes sense. But if he's asking for $25 million per year, which is what Defensive Player of the Year Myles Garrett is getting, is that too much for Howie Roseman to fork over as far as the cash flow? Because he's not giving you the level of play that Garrett is. Of course, when Howie Roseman spoke with the media on Tuesday, he was asked about the status of Reddick's deal or a potential trade. Here's what the Eagles general manager had to relay.
Well, I'd say this, Haason, obviously, unbelievable player for the Philadelphia Eagles. Local kid, great success story, Camden, Temple, Philly. Love having Haason. I think that, anything that you're trying to do, you're trying to blend, obviously, what you're trying to do this year and how you're going to look in the future, and I think that's the hardest job, but certainly, don't want to get into any specifics with any conversations with players, but have tremendous respect for the player and the person.
In terms of what's the best case scenario?
I think honest communication is the best case scenario with all your players, and understanding where you stand and not being afraid to have open doors of communication and hearing where they feel and where we feel.
And of course, Howie, a little bit of general manager speak, keeping it a little bit coy. But when I talk about Reddick being that late bloomer, I think that's an important component of this conversation, because I do believe, even though he's 29 years old, quick, twitchy athlete, doesn't have an injury history, he still has some really good football left in him. Gets started, 2.5 sacks with Arizona, goes up to 4, down to 1, 12.5, 11, 16, and 11. So that's really consistent production over the last 4 years, where he has some good bend, really fast first step coming off that edge. He's able to wreak a lot of havoc. But when you look at his numbers compared to Myles Garrett, the sack numbers are similar over the last 4 years from 2020 to 2023. Of course, Garrett has 7 more sacks, 58 to Reddick's 51. More pressures, 293 to 235. Hurries, 185 to 138. Quarterback hits, 107 to 83. And TFLs, 62 to 51. They're different players. Garrett's a little bit larger in stature. So if I'm Howie Roseman and this Eagles front office, you know that they always approach these deals with the financial elements in play. They're so good at managing the books. If you're Howie, you take those numbers to the table and you say, look, Reddick, we gave you $15 million going into 2022. Great value deal for us. You've certainly outperformed your contract. But if you want the same average annual value as Myles Garrett. Here are the numbers over the last 4 years. You've been close, but you're not to that level. And that's what I'm talking about when I discuss Reddick not quite being that tier one upper echelon edge rusher in this league, more so in that category of a 1B. And the buzz here from the NFL Combine is that Reddick could be demanding about $25 million per year. So that's why some of these trade discussions are going on right now, because if Philadelphia can get a first round pick, a second round pick in exchange for Reddick, and then they are high on a player like Nolan Smith and the other young studs on this defensive line who need to be a little bit more consistent, or Philadelphia can go bargain hunting in free agency, or they can draft a player worth a fraction of the price. Is it worth it to not pay Reddick and trade him away? Now, I do want to ask you this question here, and this is today's poll question. It's also the pinned comment on today's video here on Eagles Now. What would you do? Would you pay Haason Reddick $25 million per? Give me a P for pay or a T for trade down below in the comment section. More on this coming up around the corner, but first, let me tell you about today's sponsor, Prize Picks, the largest and #1 daily fantasy sports app in North America. You can get a $100 deposit match at prizepicks.com/CLNS. I hope that you are tailing myself, producer Trizzy, as well as producer Chip right here on Eagles Now, because this past football season, we won up to 25 times our money. Meek Mill plays Prize Picks. A lot of other celebrities are in on the action as well. And since we're here in Indianapolis for the NFL Scouting Combine, here are my selections for my Prize Picks. You want to see my PP? Here you go right here. I'm talking about my Prize Picks. Troy Franklin, let's go less than a 4.36 40-yard dash. Adonai Mitchell, really good wide receiver out of Texas, less than a 4.51 40-yard dash. And then Xavier Worthy, more than a 4.3 40-yard dash. I think he's going to clock in at about that 4.4 range. $100 deposit match for Prize Picks. PrizePicks.com/CLNS. Use the code CLNS. You put in $100, you get $100 back. So circling back to that report that I discussed a little bit earlier here on the show from Jeff McLane, Josina Anderson had it from a national angle. I've seen both of them walking around here at the Scouting Combine. Multiple teams have reached out about a Haason Reddick trade. Let's go on the local front here with McLane's report on the Philadelphia Inquirer. To no surprise, teams have already reached out to the Eagles about the 29-year-old edge rusher, NFL sources told the Inquirer. And there's no surprise, right? If there's a team on the precipice of making it to the playoffs, making a deep playoff run, contending for a Super Bowl, and they're in need of edge rusher help, and edge rusher outside of quarterback and up there with offensive tackle outside of QB, edge rusher, offensive tackle, probably the two most important positions in my eyes on a football roster. You want to get your quarterback, hunt the quarterback, and protect the quarterback. There are other teams that are going to show interest in Haason Reddick who are willing to trade for him and give up trade assets, but also sign him to that contract extension. From Reddick's perspective, again, this is obviously important as part of this dialogue and this conversation. He's outperformed his contract. So he's going to go up to Howie Roseman. Yeah, I might not be worth $25 million. And here's some advice for anybody in a contract negotiation, whether you're me here at Chat Sports, whether you're playing sports or you're working for an accounting firm. You always want to start that asking price high. I believe I bring this, and that all to the table. I think I should be paid this every single year. You start high and then you bring your asking price down. Reddick's probably going to have to do that because I don't think Philadelphia or another team is going to fork over $25 million per, but another team might be able and willing to give up assets and then give him that long-term contract extension that Philadelphia is not willing to give him. Nick Sirianni, I know a lot of you are low on him right now, even though he brought Philadelphia to the Super Bowl a little more than a year ago today. He knows the importance that Reddick plays on the defensive side of the ball for Philadelphia. Here's what he had to say when talking about the Eagles edge rusher.
Yeah, obviously, we'll see how that plays out. I don't know how that will play out. Obviously, Haason's been awesome for us these last 2 years. Big reason why we've been to the playoffs the last two years is the contributions of Haason. He's played really outstanding football. So, we'll see how that plays out, and hopefully he's an Eagle.
And I teased this a little bit earlier, But in the draft last year and at around this time a year ago here in Indianapolis, Nolan Smith was blowing away a lot of people in the pre-draft process here in Indianapolis. Quick, twitchy, bend, a player who has a similar build to Reddick, just under 240 pounds, but a really quick first step, maybe a late bloomer like Haason Reddick. Well, he played really well in that Tampa Bay Buccaneers playoff loss in the wild card round that Philadelphia suffered to end what was just a disastrous and catastrophic end of the season. And everybody kind of lost sight of the fact that Nolan Smith, one, was getting snaps. Two, he played pretty well for a defense that was getting torched. But looking ahead, that's a player that you took with the 30th overall pick. And Howie Roseman was very complimentary of Nolan Smith and even admitted going into 2024, maybe he could see some more snaps. Is that a peek into the Eagles' thinking here where they trade Reddick away, give Nolan Smith some more snaps in addition to Jalen Carter and Jordan Davis to see what you can get from your young players? Because at some point down the road here soon, you're going to have to think about them and decide whether or not they are long-term building blocks on the defensive side of the football. Yesterday, had an opportunity to speak and sit down right here on the Chat Sports set. How about this backdrop right here, looking cash money with Sam Monson of Pro Football Focus. He's the lead analyst for PFF. And of course, I had to ask him about the Haason Reddick situation. And from a national perspective, I thought he had some very interesting things to say. What's great about being here at the Combine, the news just keeps flowing. You have the Caleb Williams, Pete Thamel story. You have L'Jarius Sneed franchise tag. Is he going to get traded? And then a report coming out just moments ago before we threw on the headset that multiple teams have called Philadelphia about a Haason Reddick trade. He's an interesting player. He's 29 years old. He wakes up and he gives you double-digit sacks every year. 2022 had 16. This past year, 11. But Eagles sack numbers across the board were down. And him being 29, over the last 4 years, I looked at his numbers compared to Myles Garrett's. Garrett's obviously the better player, defensive player of the year, has more sacks, but they're not far off. But he's making $25 million per year. I don't think Reddick is due that salary, but the word is that his camp is asking for about that. If it comes to that, do you pay him? Could he be traded by Philadelphia? What's kind of your outlook on Reddick?
Yeah, I think, he's not in that very top tier of pass rushes, but he's at the top of the next tier down, right? And the question is, what salary does that command in a league where the salary cap just jumped by, $30 million more than people expected it to be? I suspect you probably need to keep him around for no other reason than they don't have alternatives anymore. If Nolan Smith had been a dominant player right away, as a rookie and looked like the heir apparent essentially to Haason Reddick, maybe it's a different answer. But absent that, Haason Reddick is your primary source of pass rush at this point. He's the one guy that is going to get you those double-digit sacks, that's going to get you 50 pressures a year, that's going to be consistently affecting the quarterback. And because of his speed, dynamism, explosiveness, the plays that he can make are potentially game-changing plays as well. He's not just going to get slow developing pressure late in the down. He's going to beat his guy quickly and make an impact on that opposing quarterback, like Brock Purdy in the NFC Championship game. If he wins quick, he's there at the quarterback by the time he's trying to make a play. So maybe he's not worth that kind of money. On the other hand, with a higher salary cap, it's a more palatable number that in a couple of years probably doesn't look as bad.
And that entire conversation with Sam up on the channel from yesterday. Some really good stuff there from a very brilliant football analyst for Pro Football Focus. We also did a segment on Jeremiah Trotter Jr., full interview up on the channel with him as well. His pops, 4-time Pro Bowler, 2-time All-Pro with Philadelphia, member of the Eagles Hall of Fame. We know that the Eagles need to address the linebacker position. Could they do so with an Eagles legend's son? Some great content here from Indy all throughout the week. And if you've been enjoying our coverage, give me a real one down below in the comment section. Be sure to give me a follow on X at Chase_Senior, closing in on 12,000 followers there, as well as on Instagram at Chase_Senior, closing in on 24,000 followers on Insta, IG, however you young bulls want to phrase it. This has been Eagles Now from Indianapolis. I'm Chase Senior. We out, and we'll catch you tomorrow. Peace.